What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show here on Sherdog.com. My name is Sean Sheehan, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined once again by Brad Wharton here as we talk a little bit of Cage Warriors. Mostly we're going to be looking ahead to Cage Warriors 186, which goes down in London. But we had a big weekend of Cage Warriors too. Two cards. We previewed them last week. We spoke a little bit about the George Hardwick fight. We'll be speaking more about that in a while again because it's a very interesting fight, actually, that George Hardwick is in. We'll talk about that in a while. But Brad, what a weekend. I know you were sick. You missed the show the weekend before. You were sick for a couple of weeks in hospital and all. How did you find to be back in the saddle 2 nights in a row? It's not easy after coming off of a bad virus like that.
I'm like a cockroach, man. You can't kill me. I'll always be there at the end. No, it was good. I was kind of dreading it. But yeah, the Friday was a bit of a struggle, and Saturday just seemed to go really well. Bit tired, but the voice held out. I was taking every combination of cough syrup and lozenge, and I was sort of using the dosage as more of a serving suggestion by the end of the weekend. So I got through a fair bit of the stuff.
I love it.
But we move and we'll crack on with next weekend now. But yeah, no, what a weekend in Manchester. Some really big fights. Fantastic atmosphere on the Saturday as usual. Believe it was the second highest attended Cage Warriors event in Manchester ever. It just speaks to the star power of Luke Riley. Obviously, pretty well publicized the last fight in his Cage Warriors contract. And the people turned out for him, and it was a fantastic atmosphere and a fantastic night.
Yeah, 100%. And the Friday night, I suppose, the main event, like Anthony, of course, did so well, and he looks like a potential star as well, and has been kind of thrust into a lot of big spots because of kind of pullouts over the last while. I thought he was very good. Damon Wilson as well was very good with that first round stoppage, and Ireland's own Craig McGrattan as well. He caught up in that fight today after missing the weekend. He was very, very good as well. But look, as you said, Luke Riley, he really was the guy. And this, we spoke about it last week, that this was by no means a gimme fight. And, we always talk about Ian Dean finding these different lads from different places of the world. And we have, I feel, we talked 2 or 3 episodes ago about the European scene. And, like Cage Warriors taking Octagon fighters, Octagon taking Cage Warriors fighters, KSW. There's a lot of fighters now coming in, and I'm looking them up, and I have to go to Fight Pass, and I'm not looking for Cage Warriors fights. I'm looking for LFA fights, and I'm looking for fights like that, and they're coming over to Cage Warriors as well. So I feel like Ian is putting his web even further across the world now, and there's a lot of good stuff coming up because of it. And we'll talk more about that later on, I suppose, with the preview. But this Luke Riley fight, it was, watching it back. He very much did not have this his own way at all, didn't he? Abasov came to fight. He came to win. He came to take that hype from Luke Riley. But Luke showed that the things he can improve, the things he needs to improve on, he can improve on. But the things that you can't buy, that grit, that heart, but also the finishing ability, that he has it in spades, along with the star power. We went over and robbed the microphone off of you and everything. It was exactly what you want, isn't it? At this stage of your career from Luke Riley, to be tested, to still win and still look like a star.
Yeah, I mean, look, I know it's it's more of a post-fight interviewer rule than a commentator rule that you're not supposed to give him the mic, but I'm not trying to stop Luke Riley. Not when he's all buzzed from knocking the guy out in the cage. I'm self-preservation when it comes to not antagonizing guys like that. But no, look, jokes aside, it was a really cool moment. It was a really impassioned little speech he gave, and the fight itself, very, very interesting. Look, we all know how dangerous Luke Riley is when he's the hammer. So it was interesting to see how he reacted to being the nail for that first round, and he was very much the nail for that first round. And what impressed me was how calm he stayed. You could very easily have got flustered and frustrated and made serious mistakes. And to be honest, defensively, didn't really make any mistakes in that first round. He was up against it, and he wasn't on the offense, but everything he did well. He was able to recover some good positions. He was able to get out of some bad spots, and then he was able to turn it on the second round. And when he really starts to get in that flow state, you saw as soon as he started landing those body shots, and Abasov didn't really know where the next one was coming from, and they were hurting him when they were landing, and the big knee really at the end of it all. We know how dangerous Luke Riley is when he starts uncorking like that. There aren't many going to stand in front of him. Tariel Abasov wasn't that guy on the night, unfortunately. A spirited effort. Loads of Azerbaijani fans in the BEC arena as well, which was really cool to see, and they gave their man a massive ovation on the way out the cage. And it's no discredit to him. it was just Luke Riley's night. And I think probably any featherweight on the European circuit, was going to see a similar result on that occasion.
I think it's really cool as well. Next gen, what they're doing at the moment, like they have obviously, preparing for Paddy's big fight, but then Molly's fighting next week, Nathan Fletcher, and a few more as well. And I was watching Paddy's vlog the other day, and the gym seems to be absolutely buzzing, and for them all to be there cage side as well, shouting on Luke while I'm, you could just feel the adrenaline in all of them. Like, I need to have this fucking fight, and then they're almost fighting on behalf of him sitting cage side. It just, I don't know. Obviously, we had that in Ireland with all the SBG crew for years, and you see it with Team KF. Sometimes you saw it. A couple of Irish shows when Rhys McKee was there, and Paul Hughes and Joe McColgan and all them lads were cage side. There's just something special about that team aura and that team ethic that sometimes comes across in MMA, and Luke Riley and Next Gen absolutely have that. But like, he is something special as well. And as I said, going into free agency now, he called for the UFC, and I think a lot of people would love to see him in the UFC. So I suppose we'll see what's next. We've a lot to talk about for this weekend, but I have to mention just a couple. Teddy Stringer, like this guy. I know I've talked about him for a good while. My guy Harry over in Severe has been waxing lyrical about him, but God almighty, this guy, like, I feel like the Antonio Sheldon fight was a few levels up in competition, and I'm just looking at the time here, 125 around one. Like that just says it all. He was so good. But it was a great night, I think, for the Cage Warriors prospects, are the guys coming towards the the title shot level, even maybe O'Meal Brown, we spoke about him last week. Adam Cullen, he got another very good win again, having to kind of a bit of a dodgy start, I suppose, to that fight, but came again. And I love this young lad Shea Ingram. He seems to just have it all. He's only 2-0, but Ben Elliott in the corner and in it and posing and everything.
He's only 21 as well. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It was a good night though for the prospects, wasn't it? And the next guys, like when Luke Riley's gone and when all these lads are gone to the UFC, there still is a good row of people coming, Brad, isn't there? We saw a lot of them on Saturday night especially.
Yeah, absolutely. From the bottom of the card up, the likes of Fran Breen, Josh Adeboye making his debut, 19 years of age, taking out Aaron Pierre. Just some incredible performances from the young lads. I'm a big fan of Antonio Sheldon. I've known him for over 10 years. I would call his fights when he was an amateur. I was calling Antonio's fights when people were saying the same things about him as they said about Teddy Stringer a few years back when he was on the amateur circuit. So seeing that fight play out, that was a great pleasure for me and a privilege to be able to call it for two guys I really, really respect. Did I think that Teddy Stringer would win like that? Absolutely not. And I think that maybe came across in the commentary, not in a million years. Did I think he'd go through Antonio Sheldon in the first round so quickly the way he did? I was expecting that one to be a real back and forth where whoever won was going to have to dig super deep. For Teddy to beat a guy that good and that durable that quickly, my goodness, what a future that young man's got. I think there'll be very few people derailing that train anytime soon.
Yeah, I would not at all be surprised if he got kind of the Lonnie Kavanagh route and they're like, we're not leaving this guy in Cage Warriors. You could see him in the contender series or something this year because he is so good. I think that'd be somewhat of a shame because, like, I think guys like him and Lonnie and, even Kaelan Knocker who's fighting next week, I think they could do with maybe 1, 2, 3 more fights in Cage Warriors before they move on. But, these days lads are getting signed very quickly, and his ability, like, Jesus, he's himself, Sean Clancy Jr., a few more as well on the way up. The likes of Max Ali about to be fighting next year, Conor McCarthy as well. I have to mention the Irish lads. Geez, there's some talent in Cage Warriors, Brad. You're going to have...
it's going to be a fun year. It's going to be a really, really fun year. People always say about Cage Warriors, like, oh, what are you going to do when Paul Hughes goes? What are you going to do when Jordan Vucenic goes? Oh, well, there's Harry Hardwick. There's George Hardwick. There's Will Curry. What are you going to do when Luke Riley goes? And there's always these guys coming up. Next up, we got a Teddy Stringer. Next up we've got a Sean. So there's always people coming through, and this is the best thing about Cage Warriors. You get to jump on those hype trains early. You get to see the development from amateurs through up and comers to genuine prospects to future stars, and the future's looking bright. And like I say, there might be a few big names leaving this year, but there's going to be some exciting up and comers that are going to take their place.
Well, the future's bright and the future's indigo this weekend in the O2. And I had this week on the podcast, I also have your guy Blake Harrison on. And I asked him a question. I was like, who do you think is like we know we've Aspinall and Paddy and all these guys in the UK at the moment, and like who do you think is the next star, the next guys coming through? And I was kind of a little bit surprised by his answer, because he was like the Hardwick brothers, and he said it straight away, and I was like, the answer he gave about them being so good at social media and funny and getting it and being really entertaining fighters, it just made a whole load of sense, the answer he gave me. And then the fact that they're fighting this weekend as well, and he's actually over in Australia at the moment as well, so he's not even going to be there to see it. But I thought it was just the perfect timing, because like it's true. Like, and I think George got obviously a bit of a setback going to the Contender Series. He came back, won a fight, and he's going to be fighting this weekend. He had a bit of a setback last week as well, obviously not fighting. But these Hardwick brothers, Brad, they're so entertaining. They're so funny. They're going at people, before the weigh-ins and stuff like that, and videos coming out all over the place and all this sort of stuff. They really are like, the star quality for these two lads is written all over. Because like, you could also see these two lads getting signed and both being on, I think we may have even mentioned it last week, both being on a Contender Series or both being on a UFC card together, and the story's just right itself. But before we get to the fight and the fights itself, the Hardwick brothers, they really have over the last few years put themselves in a great frame to become that star for not just Cage Warriors but beyond as well, I think, over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the great thing about that with them is that it's extremely genuine, and I think that's why people resonate with it. Look, these days, the days of social media and I think clout, the kids call it, you can spot a try-hard a mile off. Yeah. Maybe it's just me being old and miserable, but I can certainly spot a try-hard a mile off. So, I'm sure these kids who are watching influencers and whatnot every day, they can spot them better than me. And I think one of the reasons that Harry and George seem to be so well liked with Cage Warriors fans, and you see it not just from like UK fans or fans from the Northeast, where we see a lot of the American Cage Warriors fans who always comment on our social media, Hardwick fans straight away, because they are just genuine guys. You see the kind of humor that Harry will have on social media, and you have a chat with him, and he's the same kind of guy, and then it's the same with George. Obviously, it doesn't hurt that they're both absolutely sick in the cage as well, and they're always in really entertaining fights. But I think they've really resonated with people by just being two lads who love what they do. They're super passionate about what they do. And that just comes through every time you see them, whether it's, in the cage, whether it's a post-fight interview, the interview that George gave when he won the title in London, and all that emotion poured out. It's just absolutely fantastic. And people love it. People resonate with it, and that's why they seem to be so popular with the fans.
Mm-hmm. So this weekend, if I have it right, Harry's going to be headlining as scheduled, and George is going to be headlining the prelim section, just to give him kind of a bit of time, I suppose, to recover for the main event, which I think makes a lot of sense. It's more like a kind of a double main event, then not to steal like the WWE's idea or whatever, but that makes a whole lot of sense, I think. Let's talk about. Go on, do you want to say something about that? Because like that's
I mean, it's people will see it and think, why is he on the prelims? Look, it doesn't really matter. It's all on Fight Pass, right? It's not like the olden days where something's getting buried on a weird little TV channel somewhere and the other things on pay-per-view. It's not like that anymore. It's all on Fight Pass, but it's purely a practical thing. Harry and George, both fighting on the same night, both in title fights, both in super, super important fights for their careers. Their team needs a bit of time to get George out of there, make sure he's okay, and then get back in and start getting Harry warmed up. I don't know whether George is going to be in Harry's corner or not. Obviously that will depend massively on what happens in the fight. But you've got a team. They're not one of these like massive teams that have got 8, 9, 10 guys in the back. It's just a handful of them, and they're going to need time to prepare. So that's why it's going to be headlining the prelims, if you like, the feature prelim or the UFC Fight Pass exclusive. So we've come up with some ridiculous name for it, but essentially one of them will be headlining the prelims, one of them will be the main event, just to give the guys that little bit of extra time to get the ducks in order. So yeah, it's certainly not that one bout is considered lesser than the other. It's just a practical thing. Yeah,
I think it makes sense. As you said, they're all on Fight Pass anyway, so what difference does it really make? But let's talk about the fights. Harry is going to be fighting against Javier Garcia, who I spoke about it earlier on. One of these guys, you go to the LFA fight section on Fight Pass and said, no, he has fought in Cage Warriors as well, and watch that fight against Roberto Hernandez. And if people have seen Roberto before, like, this guy is obviously one of the top guys who's been fighting around the scene for a good long time now, and he won that fight. It was a close split decision, but I think looking at him in that, and you'd be forgiven for kind of mistaking him for a very defensive fighter because of the opponent. Watch a couple of his other fights, and I would say he's still defensive in terms of quality, but he's more attacking than that. Like, he has really fast hands. And I wrote down in my notes, just a really hard guy to beat because he's hard to hit. And because he's so fast, he can hit you very, very well. Like, he's a bit of a judge's dream. Like, he hits with power and doesn't really get it. Very good low kicks. And do you know what he does as well? He frustrates people an awful lot because when he's in a defensive mode, he kind of forces you to attack him. And then he goes for lovely takedowns. And you've seen his record. I said he hits hard. He's never knocked anyone out in 12 wins. But what he does have is 7 submissions because he draws lads into it. And he does it very, very, very well. He did combat jiu-jitsu, I think, there recently as well, and very, very good on the ground. Going in against Harry Hardwick, Brad, that's going to be a tough matchup for him, isn't it? Because, like, we know what Harry's like with the kind of high volume, lovely jab, tough as nails, very, very technical, but, like, may not be the most athletically gifted guy in the world, but there's probably no one as harder working as him and as tough as him. And we saw that in his last couple of fights, especially the one against Cavani Lopez, where that was a tough fight, especially in the first 2 minutes of it. And the fact he kept going and finished him in the fourth says everything you need to know about Harry Hardwick. This is a very intriguing matchup, isn't it? And by no means, again, as Ian Dean always seems to do, by no means an easy defense for one of the top guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, this one came about. There was a few barbs traded on social media after Harry's last fight, I think. And Ian Dean both guys called for it. And Ian Dean kind of went, yeah, okay, why not? That seems like it makes sense.
Love it.
So yeah, I think he had a bit of an easy time with this one. And, look, both guys are super game as well. They're not the kind of lads who are turning down fights or picking opponents. They both want to get after it. So obviously that makes Ian Dean's job easier as well. Garcia's a fun one. He had a great fight against Roberto Hernandez. Great jiu-jitsu, the finishing ability with the submissions. But he classes himself as a wrestler first and foremost, and it's that ability to throw those takedowns in as counters and use those takedowns to mix things up, which I think is going to be the really interesting thing to look out for in this fight. We've all seen how Harry gets when he gets in that flow state and he's throwing the combinations and he's throwing the body shots. This might be the first guy who's got a legit chance of disrupting this with the wrestling and actually not just shooting for takedowns to get himself out of danger, but using counters to put himself in a good position to start getting offense going. And putting it on Harry while Harry's on his back. So a good test here for Harry. And as you said, in terms of Javier's hand speed, he can go on the feet as well. Can he go on the feet against Harry Hardwick? That's going to be the question for Javier Garcia. That's what he's going to learn about himself in this fight. That first round that Harry had against Lopez last time out, he showed his ability to take shots, to take damage, and then he showed the grit to come back, and he just went up through the gears and put a beating on that guy. And I don't think there's many guys at that weight who are going to be able to take that beating if Harry Hardwick can maintain and just go output like he loves to do. So that's where the wrestling, I think, is going to become super important for Javier Garcia. At some point, he's going to need a break on the feet. Can he get the takedowns and earn that break? We'll see. You look back to the Riley Abasov fight, he couldn't get the takedowns to get the break in the second round, and that's ultimately the beginning of the end. If Javier Garcia can't get the takedowns, we'll see a similar situation. If he can get the takedowns and put it on Hardwick from the top, then it's game on.
100%. And not just that, but like taking his back as well. Like, he's a really good backtaker. And it's funny, I think they're a little bit similar in the way they go for their takedowns, as you said, kind of countering the movement of their opponent with the takedowns. And Harry's really good at that as well. What's so funny, you look at Harry Hardwick and think, oh, striker, but a lot of these fights do end up on the ground, and it's usually him getting kind of on the inside in the middle of the cage takedowns, which is like, it's gold dust in MMA these days, really. But he's really good at doing it. And Garcia is very, very similar in that. Who's going to win that battle is a big thing. But the battle on the feet is very interesting because, like, Garcia wants guys going forward at him, and Harry Hardwick goes forward at you. So this is really manna for heaven from both of them. They both have the opponent that they want in terms of the real estate that they desire. who's going to win it from that position? I think you're right. I think it'll all come down to those takedowns. Like, if Garcia can get them, I think he has a great chance. He's a great chance of submitting anyone. His jiu-jitsu is so good. Harry's very good jiu-jitsu as well, but like, will Hardwick give him as many opportunities by, coming forward and throwing the shots? And if he doesn't, does it take away something from him? Because he's a high volume, high shot type of guy that throws jabs inside and switches stances and gets, gets at you with his cardio. So
something to say about Harry as well.
Yeah.
One of the best back take to rear naked chokes I've ever seen
100%.
against Vita Esteban. So Javier's going to have to be careful with those takedowns, especially as the fight wears on, and they may not be as sharp. He doesn't want to go in too low and find Harry snapping onto his back really quick. That could be a bad time for the wrestler. But this one stinks of a great fight. I cannot wait.
It's often kind of those single legs as well, and we'll talk about single legs more in a second. But it's often those single legs he goes for too, which do end up with guys maybe getting the opportunity to take his back, and he's kind of happy to kind of pull guys down, pull the leg out, and land on top himself. But against someone as good as Harry Hardwick, will that be possible? I suppose we will find out on Saturday night. But I'm intrigued and I can't wait for this. Let's jump across to George Hardwick, and he's fighting Samuel Silva, announced today, or maybe a bit prematurely by me on the Severe Met podcast on Sunday. But we won't talk about that. This is a very, very interesting fight.
Per sources.
Sources close to the situation. Samuel Silva I would describe him as like your prototypical range fighter, but very, very good at it. Good right hand, good low kicks to the head, good kicks to the body, good kicks to the head. Again, I said we talk about singles. He looks for that single leg all the time. Good when it gets to the ground, takes it back very, very well. He's a nasty guillotine. He got one of his opponents recently. Let me just look here. I think it was his last fight, wasn't it? It was, yeah, over in LFA again. He was in one of the top fights over there, submitted his opponent with a guillotine, has won his last 3 in a row against some good opponents. And look, we all know about George Hardwick now. He can fight. Like, George Hardwick, I think, likes to fight inside the range, but like, watching back a couple of his fights, he can fight at that outside range as well, and then kind of draw you in. Like that fight, the fight against Jan Lias, I thought that was going to be a potential banana skin in a similar way to this, but the way he walks you down, the way he walks inside and lands his power shots, he's just so hard to deal with as George Hardwick. And I think that's where Samuel Silva might have issues here. But if he can kind of, get those counters going, if he can get that range where he loves to fight going and keep Hardwick at that range, might maybe land a few counters when he comes in. It's again a really tough fight as well. Okay, short notice and everything like that. I would, guys like this usually have fights lined up, so I would guess that he was in camp. He only fought actually it's a year since he fought, so I'm sure he was looking for a fight and everything. But it's an intriguing one here, Brad. Again, on short notice, Ian has pulled the bunny out of the hat again.
Yeah, absolutely. So all credit to Samuel for actually taking this fight. Yeah, as you can imagine, and not many people lining up to fight a guy like George Hardwick on a week's notice. So all credit to him for stepping in. Just started watching a bit of footage on him. He's got some dangerous offense. One thing I managed to spot in a couple of tapes that I've seen, he really loves to, like you say, stand at range. But when he gets guys backed on that fence, just trapping them there and picking them off with the right hand, and he really likes that the right high kick as well. So that's something that George is going to have to watch out for. He's going to have to stay on his feet. He's going to have to use his movement. Bear in mind, we're at the Indigo. It's the smaller cage. So he's really going to have to stay on his toes here and not get trapped by Silva, because he turns into a bit of a marauder when he's able to get his shots off. He's got that the sort of shoot box style Muay Thai stance with the shoulders up that he likes to throw out of. So I think, stand-up wise, stylistically, it's very much going to be the boxing of Hardwick versus that sort of Thai brawling style of Silva. So looking forward to see how those match up. Big moment for George. Look, he's making the fourth defense of his Cage Warriors lightweight title, which would be a record if he gets it. There was a couple of guys on 3. So this is a big moment for him if he can get that. And obviously, the whole... the brothers won world titles last year, so first brothers in Cage Warriors history to hold titles at the same time. They were, obviously not expecting to defend them on the same card, but it's another bit of history. And I know they kind of both picked up on that. They did an interview with BBC Sport last week, and they kind of mentioned that was actually quite a big deal to them. So you wonder how much pressure are both of them putting on themselves to perform. I mean, look, as someone with a brother myself, I'd hate to be the brother that lost, like neither of them want to be the brother that comes out of there without a world title. I think they'd probably rather both of them lose than just one of them. I know I'd certainly feel that way anyway. But yeah, it's a big moment, and like you say, they're super popular, and a lot of people saying next breakout stars from Cage Warriors. That means they're in that position, the same position Luke Riley's in, where every fight is just that little bit more important, because if you lose at this stage, unless it's a super close split decision, an absolute war, if you get submitted, if you get knocked out, if you get dominated, you've got to add another, 18 months onto the journey. You've got to add another 3 or 4 wins onto the journey. And, you saw that happen for guys like Jordan Vucenic after the Paul Hughes fight, or Morgan Charrier after the Paul Hughes fight. It's extra time in the journey. I'm sure neither of them want that. They're chomping at the bit to take that next step. So a lot of pressure, big spotlight. UFC in town. There's going to be a lot of UFC staff cage side, I'd imagine. So it's a big moment for both these guys. And if you could say a similar thing for Samuel Silva and Javier Garcia. Big moment to steal the spotlight here, to steal the thunder, and to take the places of the two Cage Warrior champs.
100%. There's so much stuff on this undercard. This might be one of the best undercards in Cage Warriors in a long, long time. And here I'm going to throw out my radical statement for the day here. I think Nick Bagley might be the best fighter in Cage Warriors at the moment.
Really? Okay.
I watched back 3 or 4 of his fights, and this guy's a fucking beast. Like, he's going across the cage, beating lads to the punch, taking them down and submitting them. Like, good guys like Jordy Backus, Ryan Shelley, Michael Quinn, Wesley Machado. He's just destroying all of these lads. And he lost to Ben Nelson in 2022, and Ben hasn't fought for a while, but I feel like that's a matchup they could make again just so he could get that loss off his record or something, maybe. I don't know. But, like, I think he's going to be fighting for the title after this weekend. But let's just say this. He's fighting Kawani Lopez, who we just mentioned a minute ago, who fought Harry Hardwick in his last fight, who is a beast and has probably the best minute or two of any fighter in Cage Warriors in him to start off the fight. So this is by no means a gimme at all. Brad, I'm so excited for this fight. I'm swearing and faking and blinding here. I can only imagine how excited you are to be able to sit there cage side and call it this weekend, because this is a fucking great fight.
Oh man! So we have a bit of software that we have all the events are separated out in it, and when fights are getting added to events, just so all the team can prep. We can prep graphics, we can prep announcements and schedules and things. The second I saw that fight pop into that, I think Ian Dean had kept it close to his chest. No one really expected. No one on the team knew that's what he had planned. The second I think I might have been sat in bed actually, and I kind of like just popped up, bolt upright, wide awake, turned the lights on, woke the missus up, rang the mother. Everyone got to hear about it that night. Man, what a fight! What a fight! Kavani Lopez, absolute stud. Nick Bagley, just like you said, just an absolute lunatic. The guy's been smashing his way through that Cage Warriors featherweight division, and make no mistake, big step up in competition. Lopez is Cage Warriors title level fighter. That's the kind of level we're talking about. He's already been there. Bagley's 6-1, I believe. So you may be thinking 2-3 more fights before he's at that level. Nah, if he beats Lopez, he's there. Like I think you'd struggle not to give him the title fight. I think you struggle not to give the winner of this fight a title bout, right? Depending on what Harry Hardwick's doing. I don't know if they do Lopez Hardwick again, if Harry doesn't go to the UFC. But all of the things being equal, this is a number 1 contender fight in my eyes. I think both guys deserve it, and I think it's going to be absolute chaos. I think, like you say, the first 2 minutes of this one are going to be absolutely crucial, because if Lopez can get you where he wants you and land those shots, you're in trouble. This is a guy who puts people out with one punch. So if he's landing 3 or 4, that's a lot of times that you're going to have to roll the dice. If Bagley can get that takedown early, we could see another Stringer Sheldon situation where he absolutely melts the guy, chokes him out in the first round. And I haven't got a clue which of those things is going to happen. And I equally think we might see 15 minutes of them beating the absolute tar out of each other. And this to me is the kind of fight I really love, because whether I'm a Cage Warriors employee and I'm here to pump it up and sell it or not, I genuinely don't know who's going to win. I don't know how they're going to do it, and that's what gets my heart pumping these days.
I'll be honest, I'm all in on the Nick Bagley bandwagon. You know, his nickname is a perfectionist, and it's the perfect name for him, really. Like I couldn't be. I think the latter of what you said there. I think he's going to take him down and melt him. Like, I really. And if he does that after what happened in the Lopez fight, like, I don't think I'm breaking any barriers here, but like, he is fighting for the title next. Like, he has to fight for the title next, or go to the UFC, because he's he's also one of those guys that's been doing it for long enough now that the inexperience, the greenness has gone out of him. Like, this will be his 9th fight, and that doesn't seem like a whole lot, but I feel like he's a guy who prepares so well as well, and he's a good camp as well. Like, I couldn't say enough good things about Nick Bagley, but what a fight that is. Just a
solid amateur career as well. You know, another one of these guys who took good fights at amateur. So when he turned pro, when he was 0-0, wasn't really 0-0. He's actually had a lot of decent experience. So again, just speaks volumes. And I say it every week, it seems, on commentary. Like, these guys, like the Teddy Strings of the world, like the Anthony Orozco's of the world, go and get that international amateur experience. Go and do the IMAFs and the Four Nations and whatever else you can. It puts you 4 or 5 steps ahead of the pack.
Yeah, look at Solomon Simon as well. Look how well he's doing after all those amateur fights. But
20-odd amateur fights, you know, then it doesn't matter. You know, he won some and he lost some. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because you see him turn pro and put all those lessons into practice, and now no one can touch him.
100%. A couple of other guys I wanted to mention. Big fight for Will Curry as well, coming back from the Contender Series. Obviously, he was on a great run before that, and Will Curry's one of those guys, you look at him and you think, oh, when's that going to end up in the UFC, just because of the physical specimen he is. But it hasn't been straightforward for him, you know, and he's fighting Eli Aronoff here, and I watched one of his fights from a few years ago, and this guy was like a brawler, just got out throwing hands. But watch one of his most recent fights, take you down, ground and pound you, which has been a bit of an issue, I think, for Will at times throughout his career. So it's another test for him again. I think it's a winnable one, absolutely. One of the other guys I wanted to mention just with that as well, and throw it through, Joanny Scott against Johnny Tuma. Joanny Scott's another one of those guys that I just love. I think he's so good, he's so effective. And this guy Tuma, he's fighting, you know, big power, former FCR champion, you know, waits kind of fight for the fight to come to him, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing nothing, and then bang, 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 throws about 20 shots at a time, and just like, you know, he just lets those weapons go. And against Joanny Scott, that, you know, that might be an issue, because Joanny's so good and has such ability. But God, I'm looking forward to those two fights, Brad. Big one for Curry, isn't it? And for Joanny Scott, I don't think he could be too far away from a title shot either, considering the guys he's beaten so far.
Yeah, I think Joanny's dangerously close to finding himself in that title picture. Like you say, big test in Johnny Tuma, but if you can come through it with flying colours, you know, I think he's one of the guys who could potentially be the guy we're talking about headlining London cards towards the end of this year, early next year, as, you know, one of those next guys to come up. Again, been around the scene a long time, called some of his amateur fights back in the day. I took a break from pro competition, and weirdly enough, I actually called his first pro fight back in Cyprus a few years back. Found myself out in Cyprus for some reason, calling MMA, and there he was. But yeah, you know, as a guy with a lot of experience, an absolute joy to watch. That fight with Jay Harris, absolutely insane. One of my favorite Cage Warriors fights in a long time. So yeah, I think a win or two for Joanny. He's right up there. And Will Curry and Eli Aronov, as you say, big fight for both guys, to be honest. You know, they're both coming off, you know, appearances on the Contender Series that didn't go their way. Eli, unfortunately, been out for quite a while now. I think he signed with Cage Warriors, I want to say early last year, or maybe even late 2023, early 2024. And I think there's been a couple of times that he's been matched, and then, you know, maybe injuries and stuff. You know, so he's been really keen to get back in, and, you know, fair play to him for, you know, taking a fight against a beast like Will Curry, a former Cage Warriors title challenger. Only losses in Cage Warriors to Stanton and Christian Leroy Duncan, so top level guys. And again, you know, the winner of this, do they fight for the title next year? Dario Belandi's going to be looking for an opponent later in the year, you would think. So huge opportunity for both guys.
I'd say they probably will, especially I think if it's Will Curry, you know, with that name, and, you know, it feels like he has he has a lot of his story still to write, in his career, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
And he has a win over the champ as well. They fought early on in their Cage Warriors careers. So I think, he's maybe thinking that the guy with the crown perhaps shouldn't be there while he's in that Cage Warriors middleweight division. And, I'd certainly be up for watching those guys run it back.
100%. Brad, just a quick run through the rest of the card. I watched back the Charles Joyner Yannick Bahadi fight, and we mentioned last week, and it was about as bad as we were talking about last week. So there was the eye poke, no contest, split draw with
technical decision split draw.
Technical decision split draw. Yeah, it was a look. It was a very.
Can you imagine if you'd bet on that outcome?
It'd be winning.
We wouldn't be sat here having this conversation, would we?
No,
one of us would be on a beach somewhere.
Bahamas, 100%. But yeah, I think it'll be. Look, it's a very interesting fight the first time out, and I think it will be this time too. And as you said, like James Webb, kind of waiting in the wings there, so we'll see what happens with that. Who are the up and comers in this card? We should be looking out for. I know Ali Sarma is, 5-0 now. Joe Middleton 2-0, and they both have kind of tests against guys who have a bit more experience than anyone else. That stands out for you on this undercard, Brad.
Well, we're going to see Oli Sawa versus Rory Evans. Unfortunately, Rory's not been too well. I think his entire family have come down with a really bad flu. He posted on social media a couple of days ago. So he's unfortunately out of that fight. But we've got Jadwinder Singh from Manchester Top Team stepping in. This is a really good clash of prospects. And I know Singh's coach, Carl Prince, very, very confident in putting him in for this fight. Thinks he's got what it takes to get the job done. Similar thing happened last weekend. Ethan Charlton going in against Leon Naumann, who's a top prospect from Germany, and Charlton beat him in Manchester. So if Carl Prince is bigging these guys up, he's a guy you want to listen to. He's been around a long time, knows what he's talking about. So very much looking forward to that one. Tariq Pell versus Emil Zafiri. That's got really fun fight written all over it. Big fan of Tariq, big fan of Emil. Both guys always in super entertaining fights. Like you say, loads of good prospects here. Kadeem Perkins, Riri Hudson. Unfortunately, things didn't go her way last time out. It's a bit of an upset. She's coming back against Miriam Grubb, who's got a lot of amateur experience. Daniel Crooks-May versus Cameron Stewart. Two big prospects there. Prospect versus prospect fight. Always good to see in my book. So that's definitely worth getting there early for. And look, it's going to be a sick weekend of MMA, right? You've got UFC London on Saturday, Cage Warriors on Friday. Make a weekend of it. Get the beers in, or if you're in London, get the tickets in. CageWarriors.com. And have yourself a merry old weekend.
Beautiful. And it's all in UFC Fight Pass, wherever you are around the world. The two kings of Middlesbrough, the two kings of Middlesbrough coming to London this Saturday night. Brad, thank you very much for joining me. It is Saturday night, isn't it? Yeah, before the UFC. I'm right there, haven't I? Yeah.
UFC Saturday night, Cage Warriors Friday night.
Cage Warriors Friday night. Have I been saying Saturday the whole time during this? Friday night.
It's
Friday
okay.
Night, Friday
I've
night.
been saying Friday.
Yeah. That's good. And I'm just here not listening to you. Friday night, Cage Warriors, UFC Fight Pass. Check it out. Thank you, Brad, for joining me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. And we'll see you all next time.